And before we go any farther, here's my biggest question with all this. I don't understand why we're even talking about a 16-team playoff and why we're even talking about expanding the playoff when we haven't even had 1 year, not even one single season, in the 12-team playoff. Well. What do we have here? Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hope y'all having a great and fantastic Wednesday. If not, hope this video can make it a little bit better. We got a lot to talk about and go over. This is an ongoing and developing story that I'm shocked nobody is really bringing up or talking about, and that is no other than the Power 5 conferences are already talking about expanding the college football playoff. But hold on. There's more. They're also talking about expanding March Madness. And it is being stated, these aren't my words, but the words coming from the people themselves, that the expansion of March Madness is inevitable. Here's what the ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips said himself, quote unquote, "We are in the middle of a massive change in our industry. We are working together to eventually come up with a sustainable model for college athletics, and we believe that both the CFP and the NCAA men's basketball tournament needs a holistic look." Wow. And that's just the tip of the iceberg on all this. And trust me, we're going to cover all the main stuff, the stuff I feel like is important and the stuff you need to know, but there's still so much other conversations and talks going on behind the scenes that we're not going to touch on. And whoa, hold on. I know what some of you are sitting there saying, Matt, what's going on, my brother? We're talking about expanding the playoffs? We haven't even played in the current new format of 12 teams. So let me get this straight, Matt, because it doesn't sound right. We just expanded the playoffs from 4 to 12 teams. We haven't even played in the new format, and yet we're talking about a newer format? And the simplest answer to that question is, yeah, that's what's going on here. Obviously, it goes without being said, it's a little bit more, not a little bit more, I'm being sarcastic, a lot bit more complicated than that, and we're going to go over all that. And although I think the college football playoff, that's more important just due to the fact more people care about it, the NCAA tournament potentially expanding, that is ridiculous in my humble opinion. I'm getting a little too far ahead of myself though. Strap in, buckle up, it's going to be a good video to say the least. And hey, if you like college basketball content, football content, just content like this in general, consider subscribing to the channel. We'd love to have you here. We're just a bunch of guys and girls that like talking about sports. That's it. But alright, Matt, blah, blah, shut the crap up. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. We're jumping straight into this. Here's what you need to know first. Over the last 3 weeks, at 2 separate meetings, high-ranking college leaders took the initial step to exploring significant change to both, not one, but both the NCAA men's basketball tournament and the CFP. In a meeting in Washington, D.C. on January 25th, which wasn't too long ago, commissioners of the SEC, Big Ten, ACC, Big 12, and yes, even the Pac-12 opened dialogue with Baker about their wish to examine the NCAA tournament expansion. Separately, in a meeting of the CFP Management Committee in Dallas on February 5th, Big Ten and SEC leaders opened dialogue with the other 8 FBS commissioners and Notre Dame on their intent to see the CFP's revenue distribution model and voting structure change. While the Power Leagues together team up to push the NCAA to grow the basketball tournament, the 2 richest leagues are joining forces to modify its football counterpart. A seasoned New York businessman and former talent agency executive Yormack views the moves as the next phase of college athletics evolution into a more robust business. In the business world, it is referred to as the value equation. So that right there is a bunch of nerd talk, and also, yet again, let me remind you, I'm just touching on the high points in these articles and whatnot because there's a lot of just jibber jabber and stuff that we really don't care about. It is being stated, discussions between the commissioners and the NCAA go beyond the topic of revenue and also include the growing wish for more access in the form of at-large spots, referring to the NCAA tournament, not the college football playoff. In the meeting with Baker, commissioners were transparent about their desire for more access in a 68-team field that includes 32 automatic qualifying spots, 27 of which go to non-power leagues. Quote unquote, "I want to see the best teams competing for a national championship, no different than the Big Ten and SEC want to see in football. I'm not sure that is currently happening." Yet again, I'm going to throw in there, we're talking about basketball right now. So in other terms here, if you don't understand what Yormack's complaint is on the basketball side of things, it's okay. Yeah, we got 68 teams getting into the field, but we don't think it's the 68 best teams referring to. You got your, how do I say this nicely here? You got your non-Power 5 teams getting in that are winning their, you know what I'm talking about, they win their conference championship and they get in as like the 14, 15, and 16 seeds. Yormack is pretty much questioning the fact that, oh, I don't think some 14 seed who wins some no-name conference is better than some team in the Big 12 or SEC or wherever that goes 17-12 in their conference. I guess Yormark's trying to use the same approach as we use with football, because we say, oh yeah, we don't care if Liberty goes undefeated, they're not going to win a college football championship. It's not even possible. So I get the argument he's trying to make, but I think it's a flawed argument because you're talking about two different sports here. In basketball, anybody can beat anybody. It's just different, man. It's not likely that a St. Peter's beats Kentucky. If they play 100 times, Kentucky's going to win, I don't know, 95 of those games. But the point is, there's a chance. Whereas if St. Peter's, I don't even think they have a football team, but let's just say St. Peter's or Fairleigh Dickinson had a football team. If they were to play Alabama or Georgia 100 times, they would lose 100 times. It's not even possible. And we'll touch more on that a little later in this video, but let's get a move on. Moving along here to the football stuff, on February 5th, there was a meeting in Dallas talking about the revenue distributions models and what's going to happen there. One thing that was brought up is the SEC is counting for nearly 40% of playoff spots in the CFP era and only earning 17% of the revenue. And I thought this was interesting. In the current structure, the Power 5 splits about 80% of the CFP's annual $460 million, followed by the Group of Five's 20%, and then a small fraction is distributed to independents in the FCS. But what I thought was interesting was the fact that currently the Power 5 teams, they split the revenue of the 80%. So in other terms here, the Pac-12, who has flat out sucked outside of this year and only made, how many playoffs have they made? They had Oregon once and then Washington twice. The Pac-12, who really has been a non-factor in the playoff, they're splitting the same revenue with the SEC, who has dominated the playoff. And I know the Pac-12's done now, but you can make the same argument for the Big 12, couldn't you? Has the Big 12 ever won a CFP? Unless I'm missing a year or something here. Yeah, the Big 12's never won a CFP. So now here's what the new conversation is about, and I'll just show it to you right here, quote unquote. The real question on the revenue is how much is going to be concentrated in a handful of conferences. It's 80-20 right now to the so-called P5, but there are only going to be 4 of them, and then the question is how much. The SEC and Big 10 are probably going to want more. It's understandable. That's going to get worked out. So that is currently something that's ongoing behind the scenes, how much revenue is going to get distributed amongst the Power 5 conferences, which you guys probably don't care too much about. It doesn't affect you, and it doesn't affect the playoff. But here's what does affect you. While serious discussion about expanding the 12-team playoff format has not arisen inside the CFP meetings, many believe it eventually will. Petiti, who is the Big Ten commissioner, has privately discussed with commissioners expansion models that include 14 and 16 teams with multiple automatic qualifiers to major conferences. Sankey, SEC commissioner, and his corresponding representative on the CFP Board of Managers, Mississippi State President Mark Keenum, have suggested in the past that the model incorporate only at-large selections. What about that? Oresco, who is set to retire this summer, says that a move to a 16-team playoff could very well be in the future, and that such a tournament would, quote-unquote, probably be under a 5+11 format with 5 automatic berths to league champions and 11 at-large spots. The truth is, if you went to 16, you're not going to fundamentally change the playoff, and I agree. As to where it stands currently, this won't be final. We are in a 6+6 format. 6 at-large spots and then 6 automatic bids, but that is going to change to 5+7 because the Pac-12's it's gone now. There is no Pac-12. I don't know when they'll make it official, but it's going to be 5 automatic and 7 at large, and that's completely fine with me. If we do wind up expanding it though to 16, yeah, it's just going to be, okay, you still got your 5 auto bids, and instead of 7 at large spots, you're going to have 11. And before we go any farther, here's my biggest question with all this. I don't understand why we're even talking about a 16-team playoff and why we're even talking about expanding the playoff when we haven't even had 1 year, not even one single season, in the 12-team playoff. And look, if you've been following the channel, you know how I feel about it. I'm the more the merrier type of guy. The more football, the more happier I am. I've been stating for the past 3 to 4 years, we've been needed to expand the playoff to 8 or 12 teams. And honestly, just my immediate reaction to this, and it's not going to happen anytime soon, but if we do expand to 16 teams, I'm not opposed to it. Don't have a problem with 16 whatsoever. I do, however, think once we start getting into the 20s, if we do ever get there, that's a different conversation for a different day. But I'm going to divert back to this, and I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm trying to rationalize and even think about what's the need for expanding from 12 to 16. I get the whole gripe with 4. Yeah, it worked, but 4, it's just not enough. I think 8 to 12 is the sweet spot, especially 12, because now it's going to give you that Cinderella team like we see in March Madness. You're going to have some home playoff games. It's going to be a heck of an environment, and I think it's going to be awesome. And also another reason why I've been an advocate for a 12-team playoff is because it gives more teams hope later in the season, which gives me more incentive to watch. Whereas, I don't know, let's just say 2 or 3 years ago, if you had number 15 Utah playing number 10 Oregon late in the season, I didn't care to watch that game. There's no really any implications on the line. But now when it's late in the season, and let's just say theoretically speaking here, you got number 9 LSU versus number 14th ranked Alabama, that's a huge game because there's a playoff spot on the line. But most importantly, it's going to have more people tuning into the games because their season's not over yet. Whereas in the previous years, as soon as you got 2 losses, I'm like, oh, yep, I don't even care to watch that team because they're out of the playoff. So I think 12's enough, but I can't deny the fact that I think it's extremely interesting. You got commissioners already talking about, yeah, might have to look at 16 here. The fact they're already talking about it, it has to hold some weight. So we'll see what happens there. And normally I'd say, let me know your thoughts on it. Do you think we should go from 12 to 16? But there is no thoughts because we haven't even had 1 year at 12. Let's go back to this basketball topic, though. A lot of people in the sports world, they're not too fond of the basketball talk. The playoff going from 12 to 16 teams potentially in the long run, not really a big deal. But as far as it goes for the NCAA tournament potentially expanding, people do not want to see that, and I'm in the same boat. So here's my thing on this. Your max gripe about the current NCAA tournament field is, yeah, you're getting 68 teams in, but only about, 35 of those are at-large spots. So really, if you're a team like, who's a team on the bubble? Texas A&M or Mississippi State, you don't have to be a top 68 team. You got to be a top 40 team. Here's all I'm going to say about the expansion talk for the NCAA tournament. If you don't win your conference championship and you are not one of the best, 45 teams in the nation, you're probably not a national title contender. I'm just throwing it out there. Let's just be real with ourselves. When are we going to look in the mirror and say, okay, that team that's ranked 47th in the country, who's sneaking in the last 4 in, even they're not legit national title contenders. I know you see it every now and then. I think UCLA was the latest team to have a crazy run. It was a couple years back, and they were one of the last 4 teams in. But when's the last time one of the last 4 teams in won a national championship, if ever? I don't know. My point isn't saying all this, and let's make a long story short here. If you don't make the NCAA tournament, you have nobody to blame but yourself. This isn't college football where you can have a couple bad plays go your way and you look up and you're 10-2 and you got left out of the playoff. No. In basketball, you can lose 15 games to get into March Madness. And I'm talking about as an at-large spot. We've seen teams with losing records get into the tournament just because they got hot and won their conference championship. The basketball tournament's fine. Don't touch it. If you expand it anymore, how many teams are you wanting to get in? Is it 72? Are you wanting 80? What are we doing here? And already, as to where it stands with college basketball, the regular season, I'm not going to say it's meaningless, but it doesn't hold as much weight as a college football regular season because you play so many games. And like I said, you can lose 14 games in the SEC or Big 12 and still get in. In Joe Lunardi's new bracket, he has Alabama as a 2 seed. A 2 seed. Okay? And Alabama's lost 7 games. Granted, they've lost to some really good teams, but you see what I'm saying? Absolute craziness, man. We're even talking about this. Absolute craziness. I've already made this video way too long. Let me know your thoughts and everything down below, but